Hello, my name is Will Toor, W-I-L-L-T-O-O-R. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Energy Office, and I'm one of 4 state agency leaders who will be speaking during the day, including the Executive Directors of our Department of Transportation and Department of Natural Resources, and the Director of our Environmental Programs for the Department of Public Health and Environment. The reason we have so many senior officials here is because of the state's deep concern with the negative impacts on Colorado and the national environment that we believe these proposed rule changes would lead to. Colorado is a state that is on the front lines of climate change, with impacts that could dramatically affect public health, our economy, our quality of life, and our natural beauty. Projected impacts include major threats to our ski industry, our agriculture, the snowpack that is crucial to our water supply, many more days over 100-degree temperatures in our population centers, greater risk of catastrophic wildfires, and damage to our iconic alpine environments. That's why the Colorado Legislature and Governor have adopted science-based emissions targets designed to align our state with the scale and pace of emissions reductions that are needed to mitigate the worst of these impacts, and why we are working with businesses and communities across the state to reduce emissions while seizing the economic benefits and consumer cost savings that come from switching from expensive legacy fossil fuel power plants to inexpensive zero-emission renewables, and magnifying these benefits by accelerating the transition to electrification of transportation and buildings, while also working to reduce emissions of methane from oil and gas drilling in the state. Unfortunately, the administration's proposed changes to NEPA go in the opposite direction by effectively removing any requirement for federal agencies to consider the impacts of their decisions on emissions of greenhouse gases. The proposed changes would eliminate the requirement to study indirect and cumulative effects, and directs that effects should not be considered significant if they are remote in time, geographically remote, or the product of a lengthy causal chain. This language appears to be surgically designed to eliminate consideration of climate impacts, since these are precisely caused by the cumulative impact of emissions of greenhouse gases. Unlike other pollutants, where impacts are primarily local and vary depending on ambient concentration, greenhouse gases are long-lived and globally well-mixed, and what matters is cumulative emissions. In the Colorado context, our agency is particularly concerned about decisions the federal government may make about energy and transportation infrastructure, or about fossil fuel development on federal public lands in Colorado, that could undermine state policy goals and harm the residents of Colorado. There have been multiple court rulings that have required federal agencies considering new fossil fuel development in Colorado to consider the impacts of their decisions on climate change. For example, there have been cases involving federal approvals for expansion of coal mines, in which the courts have rejected environmental analysis that did not consider the social cost of greenhouse gas emissions from the greater level of combustion of coal, and did not consider approaches to reducing emissions of methane, a potent, shorter lifetime greenhouse gas. This is very important to Colorado. Last year, our legislature adopted SB 236, directing the use of the full social cost of carbon for regulatory purposes in multiple decisions, and other legislation requiring greenhouse gas emissions reports for legislation that may impact emissions. Our State Air Quality Control Commission has adopted multiple measures designed to reduce methane emissions from oil and gas operations, and Senate Bill 181 requires a phase-in of continuous emissions monitoring to facilitate further reductions. Having major federal decisions go forward that do not consider these issues is incompatible with our state policy goals and will put our residents at risk for greater harm to our health, economy, quality of life, and iconic landscapes. We urge the administration to strengthen the analysis of cumulative and indirect impacts and require greater attention to the impacts of federal decisions on climate change, rather than the current proposal to essentially eliminate all consideration of climate impacts in decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Toor. Our last